This episode is in part brought to you by Surfshark. Now, I want you to imagine a scenario where you're asking your friendly uncle for some life advice, and this uncle sits there and he tells you, well, kid, you just need to live a little more. That piece of advice is absolutely valid. Sometimes experience is the best teacher out there. Sometimes you really do need to learn something by messing it up the first few times. And through experience, through trials and errors, you will gain this experience. But could there be a possibility that there's another way that we can learn about reality? I want you to realize, and I've also realized this within my own life recently, we don't have that much time to think anymore. Remember that good old debate between empiricists and rationalists, a couple of hundred years ago? Where empiricism is basically the philosophy of your friendly uncle. Just go out there and live, man, and you'll gain all the lessons you need from living. You can gain everything from your sensory experiences. Whereas the rationalists, they tend to say, well, experiences can be very deceiving. They can deceive you all the time. Hence, we must rely on reason to doubt, to think, and to reason from the ground up for us to reach some certainty. Now, I'm the kind of person who's very sensitive to extremes. And if you spend any time on social media, if you spend any time on a blog somewhere, well, experience tends to be the thing that's presented to you first before, well, advocating some quiet time for self-reflection and thinking. Almost nobody's talking about the value of carving out a dedicated space of time for you to think on a daily basis. And given that the bulk of our information diet is actually from Instagram, from news articles, from all these outlets, how reliable are our judgments? That's the really interesting question that we should ask. And are there certain lessons that we can learn from the rationalists in the 21st century? Therefore, to kind of answer this question, I'm going to put myself through a little experiment. And the essence of this experiment goes something along the lines of this. I'm going to replicate Descartes' 6 days meditation. Every evening, I'd sit down for 1 hour straight and read one chapter or one meditation from this book and proceed to think about this chapter for the rest of the hour. And as a part of the ground rules, this hour is absolutely technology free, absolutely internet free, and it's going to serve as the perfect little space, or this perfect vacuum for me to do some thinking on my own. Is there value to such an exercise, or is there not? We'll find out in 6 days. And for me, I'm pretty damn excited to get this thing started. So now that all the ground rules are in place, I have to tell you a little bit about today's video sponsor, Surfshark. Speaking of carving out a private little space for you to think, personally, I'm a very big fan of heading to the State Library of Victoria to study. It is a beautiful library with amazing architecture and such an amazing atmosphere. But one of the things that landed me in a lot of trouble was their public Wi-Fi access. Did you know that whenever your computer or your phone or your tablet is connected to a public Wi-Fi, it's actually shedding off a lot of personal information, personal data, and your potential IP address? And in fact, long story short, recently I got scammed by a phishing website, and I ended up having to suspend my bank account for over a month. So I was using cash for a full month to recover my bank account. So that was not a very fun lesson to learn. And ever since the scam incident, I got myself Surfshark VPN and decided to encrypt my online activities or encrypt my online data so that I wouldn't fall prey to the same trap ever again. And if you're concerned that your identity might be linked to your IP address, well, Surfshark makes sure that your browsing history, your location, and all of the private information are completely private when you're browsing the internet. And if you're like me and you're a big fan of digging through podcasts in foreign languages, or for me, it's accessing academic journals from different databases across the world, Surfshark allows you to change your virtual location so that you can bypass censorship and access content that is otherwise unavailable in your region. So if you want to carve out that same window of privacy for yourself when you're browsing on the web, Surfshark is offering all of you an amazing deal. You can click the link from the description box down below and enter the promo code Waldun for an 83% off plus 3 extra months for free for Surfshark. There's also a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to try it out. Thank you, Surfshark, for making this video possible. And now let's move on to day number 1 of Descartes' Meditation 1. So, according to the rules, welcome to my little thinking corner or nightly meditation corner. Or, I don't have a fireplace here, I'm not as cold as Descartes, but I do have a Mr. Plato looking at me. And according to the rules, no technology, no internet, and I checked all my emails and I finished off everything that I needed to do before I go to bed so I can just sort of kick back and relax and enjoy my free hour of thinking. And of course, we have Descartes' meditation with us, and I have my personal journal right here. I'm gonna set up an hour on my phone, and that's ticking off, and we're gonna start our daily meditation or philosophical meditation. Before I go here, the silence is very comforting, especially after a long day of dealing with noise. So, just a little quick update. It's getting too warm in this room, and I took off my jacket, and I just finished reading the first meditation, and it was very good. And definitely after just maybe like 20 minutes of reading, there's still like 40 minutes left on the clock, I can notice my voice getting a lot slower. So after reading the first meditation, I'll summarize some of the thoughts I've had in my personal journal here. So after reading the first meditation, now I'm gonna write my first meditation, sort of like to help me understand Descartes a little better. So lessons and takeaways, I was falling asleep, and it's really funny because Descartes also talked about in the first meditation how he was like on the verge of sleep before he could really doubt everything that he wanted to doubt. In the first meditation, Descartes casted into doubt empirical knowledge. And he even casted into doubt things like the fact that he was dressed properly, the fact that he was like sitting upright in front of his fireplace, and he's just kind of like, it could be the case that I'm actually in bed right now, completely naked. And towards the end of his first meditation, he proposed the possibility that there might be an evil demon who's just trying to deceive him by placing all these weird stuff around him, placing all these dubitable senses around him for him to, well, basically fall asleep into delusion. I definitely noticed a lot of jitteriness when I started my hour of just sitting alone and reading and thinking, because, well, we're just not used to doing this a lot. But after maybe the 30-minute mark, I noticed myself slipping to this kind of like, hey, this is nice. I'm gonna start this earlier tomorrow. Now it's like 12 a.m. already. It's just kind of ridiculous to go to bed this late. Towards the end of the session, I was literally on the verge of sleep. And yeah, it's kind of funny how Descartes was also on a verge of sleep. And that concludes our first meditation, first day, and only 5 more to go. Hello and welcome to day 2 of trying out Descartes' meditations, and today we're moving on to meditation number 2. Like I said yesterday, we're going to conduct this hour of thinking a little bit earlier. So right now it is about 6:48 p.m. So there's still quite a lot of daylight outside. So I've decided to move this table here against the window so I can get some natural light. It's getting a little dark and a little cold here, so I'm gonna put this back on. I'm not gonna go into too much detail here, but this is basically the meditation where he stated that I think, therefore I exist. And more precisely, here's the line, or it could be that were I totally to cease from thinking, I should totally cease to exist. And later on, he did another little critique of sensory experiences by proposing this example or this thought experiment of looking at a piece of wax. And it's actually really funny because towards the end of the second meditation, he talked about how I should like to stop here and meditate for some time on this new knowledge I have gained so as to fix it more deeply in my memory. And that's exactly what I'm gonna do right here. So about 10 seconds ago, my timer went off, and here's the end of meditation number 2, day 2. Another hour of thinking for myself, thinking for yourself, or carving out that little space for you to read and think. So, a couple of takeaways here. It's definitely a lot easier for me to get into the groove today compared to yesterday. And also, I think the scenery really helped. So there was a lot of daylight when I started my 1-hour philosophical meditation. And my concentration was definitely a lot sharper compared to yesterday because I started at 11 p.m. yesterday, and that just wasn't a very good time to start doing any kind of philosophical reading. Nevertheless, successful second day, and let's keep this going. And I'll see you tomorrow for meditation 3. All right, welcome to day number 3. Where Descartes is going to tackle the existence of God. And I mean, this is the title on the book. So today we're gonna start an hour earlier than yesterday. And now it's about 5:30 in the afternoon. And now we're gonna set the timer for an hour, and let's prove the existence of God with Descartes. Okay, so the timer went off about 10 minutes ago, and I did some independent research. For the sake of understanding this chapter, I have to say, man, this is one of those chapters that can really spin you into a yarn if you're not careful. So what's the key takeaway here? Descartes basically created these distinctions between ideas. And some ideas are stemmed out of volition, or these urges to believing something, while other ideas are distinct and clear and self-evident. So Descartes' question was, how does one guarantee that we can perceive such a perfect thing at all? How can we assume that there are these clear and distinct and perfect ideas out there, given that so many of our sensory experiences are just simply unreliable? From my understanding, this is where God comes in, because God is this absolutely perfect substance, absolutely perfect and distinct substance that can be conceived by your mind. Hence, the existence of this, supreme and perfect being guarantees that we, as thinking substances, can also reach that state of perfection with our understanding. I know that's a drastic oversimplification, and also this is just like a demonstration of how frustrating philosophy can be. In fact, many scholars in the field right now, they're still debating over these proofs of God and, what was Descartes actually on about when he tried to prove the existence of God. And so, I'm gonna rest my case here and think about it a little more tonight. And it also helped a lot, because this chapter right here demanded a lot of concentration, a lot of synthesis of ideas. Plus now it feels like I've got a routine going. I've got a little window here. I've got this desk here. I've got this very sort of like Zen setting, and it's really conducive to some clear and distinct thinking. Nevertheless, I'm probably gonna spend the rest of the night chewing over this meditation on God, and to sort of like make my notes a little more explicit. And I will see you for tomorrow's meditation on truth and falsity, which sounds oddly complicated and more intellectual wrestling. So I will be back, and I'll see you there. So here's a story. I stayed out a little late tonight, and because I decided to dine out with friends for dinner, and it just so happened that a train line was also down, so I had to take a replacement bus. So right now it is about 10:20 p.m. Later than usual, or compared to the last 2 days. But nevertheless, nothing is gonna stand in the way of our daily hour-long reading or meditation. So without further ado, I'm gonna set my timer for an hour, and let us tackle this fourth meditation on truth and falsity. The timer just went off, and it is way past my bedtime, and I'm getting the same kind of like drowsiness, or the same kind of like feeling of being on the verge of falling asleep. But nevertheless, after, about 2 pages of summary notes, I think meditation number 4 might be one of my favorite meditations. So what was Descartes on about in the fourth meditation? Well, he was trying to distinguish two things, truth and falsity. There's a very interesting distinction that Descartes made in this chapter, or in this meditation, between will and the intellect. The intellect is capable of perceiving clear and distinct ideas because, it's created by God, and it's capable of reaching those clear and distinct ideas. Whereas will, its scope kind of extends beyond the intellect. You can sort of will your way to ideas about things that you don't really understand, or make very limited judgments about the things that you just don't have a clue about, and yet still believe that. And that, to Descartes, is falsehood. Whereas truth, on the other hand, distinct from falsity, is when you reason from a place of always having clear and distinct ideas all the time. Nevertheless, a very insightful and fruitful session, I'd say, and I'm so damn tired, so I'm gonna go get some sleep, and I will see you tomorrow for the fifth meditation, which is another consideration of God, another chapter on God. And that concludes tonight's late night meditation on the existence of true and false knowledge, and of course, of God. Welcome back to day number 5/6 of the daily meditations. And now it is about 11:33 a.m. So let me explain. Tomorrow night, which is Friday night, so today's Thursday, I actually have quite a bit of a big night out tomorrow. So I won't be home till pretty damn late. So in order to not have the load looming over my head of like, oh, you have to get back home at 11 and do your Cartesian meditation at 9, and to just like let myself have a good time, I'm gonna chain myself to a chair this morning to do tomorrow's 1 hour today. So in total today, we're gonna spend about 2 hours on Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy. Nevertheless, I've just done my morning routine and I'm feeling pretty grounded and centered, but that dog would not stop barking. Speaking of which, the window is lighting up, illuminating this room as we read about God. I'll see you in an hour. So that was the end of the fifth meditation, or jibber-jabbering with Descartes for the 5th hour. And I'm sorry about the washing machine in the background. It's kind of, you know, saying an opera, an entire movement of an opera in the background. But nevertheless, the 5th meditation reconsidered this washing machine. It reconsidered the idea of the existence of God, and it also raised a very important point about knowing as recognition. So for Descartes, very clear and distinct ideas are in a sense self-evident. So whenever you perceive the idea, it's like you've never had to learn it, you just have to recognize it and just sort of acknowledge it in your direct experience. So here from the Cambridge edition, it is on page 51 where Descartes stated, I am not so much learning something new as remembering what I knew before. And just very quickly on the entire God business, in my opinion, it's actually pretty impossible to see what Descartes was advocating for if you don't momentarily believe in the idea of God. Even just like momentarily when you're reading Descartes, if you don't give Descartes the benefit of the doubt, it's actually very, very difficult to grasp his metaphysics. Nevertheless, a very interesting meditation today, and I will see you in about 6 hours for the final meditation, which is the 6th meditation, which concludes our entire little experiment. All right, here it is. I have my lucky mug over here cheering me on. Right now it is about 6 p.m. I mean 5:49, but you know, close enough. So let us set an hour on the timer right here, and let's get down to business. You know what that means. It's over. It was a very interesting book, Meditations by René Descartes. This is probably my first time systematically parsing through every argument. I think after this entire experiment, I accumulated something like 20 pages of summary notes just on a very short treatise. And this is where the mind-body duality comes in. And this is where he explicitly stated that human senses or human nature, even though it's an amazing corporal structure, even though your anatomy is an amazing piece of work by you-know-who, God, the sensory information that you receive are still kind of crude, are still kind of limited, but this mind-body duality suggests that this thing, which is like directly connected to clear and distinct ideas, can sort of direct the body into doing the sensible thing. And lastly, just very quickly, another distinction is that the body is capable of being divided into different parts. And that's why it's distinct from the mind, because for Descartes, the mind is one singular substance. It's a unity, and it's something that cannot be divided. But nevertheless, that's the end of my labor for 6 days. Now I'm just gonna switch the camera around and record some final remarks. All right. Right now I look like a therapist. If I cross my legs here, I'm just kind of like, tell me about your father. Today's therapy session is not going to be about you, it's going to be about me. So 3 lessons from isolating myself effectively for an hour a day for, well, 5 to 6 days, or 5 days in total. Let's just say that throughout my entire university career, never have I ever received an extended period of reading time, or an extended period where I could just really spend time with a thinker. Teachers or professors, they simply assign you some excerpts for the entire philosophical work, because throughout the semester, the teachers want to cover as many thinkers as possible, so they assign you like a little essay by this guy, or a little pamphlet by that guy, or a little novel by this author here, as our attention spans are decreasing while universities are following suit. But because now, after I finished my degree, now I'm a free man, I've really allowed myself that window to really go deep on, well, for example, this week it's been Descartes. Probably next week, if I keep this habit up, it'll be Wittgenstein, or, you know, so on and so forth. My God, there's so much depth and interesting subtleties and interesting things that I would have missed. You know, I read Descartes when I was in high school, and I missed virtually 80% of all of his arguments. And you know, it's going to be a constant process of refining my model of reality, but it really instilled within me a deeper appreciation of slowly parsing through the arguments of a philosopher, or really spending a very long time with a thinker. And the second lesson here from Descartes more generally is just, it made me question, or it made me doubt basically many of the judgments that I have. Never mind all the metaphysical mumbo jumbo about the existence of substances or the existence of the external world. Very practically, it really made me second doubt my opinions, or think twice before I submit to a very clear judgment of a certain thing, and to sort of create these mental airbags so you don't crash fully into stupidity. Well, that's a really helpful lesson for me. And it also creates that critical space between you and the media, between you and the news, and you and social media. So the general value of Descartes' philosophy, or philosophy in general, is to give you that safe landing pad, or that safe mental airbag for you to not just crash straight into some obscure understanding. And the third point, which I've kind of addressed in day number 2, which was this idea of confronting emptiness and confronting the quiet, or confronting the quiet life. This idea of confronting emptiness, or confronting, I'd say, loneliness, or this idea that you're in a room alone, you have no interruptions, you have no distractions, but you're simply going to direct your mind's focus towards things that are not going to distract you. At first, it was definitely challenging. My friends are like, where the hell are you for an hour? But after a little while, once you start setting out those boundaries for people to realize that, hey, I'm going to spend an hour a day by myself to think, or to get my mind straight so I don't do anything stupid, naturally you'll start to develop a taste for this quietude, because you're going to realize that, man, this is the first time I've experienced some peace and quiet, and it actually feels kind of nice. But just during that 1 hour per day where I'm able to clear everything off my calendar, and where I can have a frank and honest dialogue with myself, it really made me into a happier person. Not in the span of 6 days, but if I keep doing this on a daily basis, I can really see the practical benefit of this. And when you head back out there again, I'm not saying that you should just go and become a hermit, because you've reconciled a lot of things with yourself, and because your judgment's a little more clear after you've spent a lot of time thinking. Then when you confront people again, when you chat with someone at a cafe again, that conversation is going to be much more interesting. And through, I really liked this experiment. I really enjoyed spending 6 days with Descartes, really enjoyed confronting quietude, or confronting this peace and quiet. And I would really encourage you to do something similar. It doesn't have to be Descartes. You don't have to read Descartes if you don't like Descartes. You can pick up any book that you're interested in and that you wanted to read for a little while, and maybe commit to like a 20-minute per night sort of ritual for you to just sit and think and just read in quietude for 20 minutes and see how you feel. Do that for a week. And if you're especially adventurous, embark upon this experiment and leave me some of your comments down below. I'd love to read your solitary stories, or your stories of your philosophical meditations. Nevertheless, that's all I have for this mini documentary of me trying to live like Descartes for 5 to 6 days. And thank you so much for watching. And if you're into what I'm doing here, I have recently created a Substack where I will record some minor insights here and there. They're going to be little podcast episodes on a fortnightly basis. So if that's something you're into, check it out in the description down below. Then again, a final shout out to today's video sponsor, Surfshark. Thank you for making this video possible, and also making our private spaces on the internet possible. And as a lucky viewer, be sure to check out Surfshark for that special discount in the description also. Anyway, Robin Waldun here. Thank you for putting up with me today, and I will see you with more. Take care, and goodbye.